Well, welcome to Facing Dementia. This is our fourth episode, and this one is all about creativity for brain function. And we are taking these conversations about what happens when you have a precursor diagnosis to dementia. What is the proactive approach that you can take? I'm Dr. Michelle Greenwell, and I'm here again with Laurin Wittig, who has been just exceptional in this series of bringing forward her transformation experience, but also her background as a mentor, author, podcaster, and then the explorer of healing possibilities. So welcome, Laurin. Thanks for coming back.
Oh, thanks so much. This is a joy always to be with you.
In the past three episodes, we have traveled through Laurin's diagnosis, through her shamanic lineage. We've done profound reconnection with nature. And then the first episode was all about the diagnosis and what that meant and the information regarding with that. And today we're going to turn it into something joyful and scientifically compelling, because we're going to look at the creativity for brain health and what is the science and research that has been appearing around that, and then what we know from our experiences that can help support that brain health. And Laurin's going to shine a light on a few of the things that she's been digging into. As we always do, though, we need to start with a cup of tea so that you can have a healing session while you listen to this podcast. And so, Laurin, I'm going to ask, what is in your cup today?
I have a citrus green tea that's got green tea and marigold petals and orange oil in it. And it
Mm.
just felt like the right thing to have today.
Mm-hmm. Cleansing and homey, and
And it
it's like a
smells
hug.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, beautiful. All right. And I today am going to shine a light on the Take the Shore Road tea from the Cape Breton Tea Company. And this one is a highlight because when you create it, I should have put it in a clear glass. When you create it, it's like turquoise blue. It's like the color of the ocean when the sun hits it. And I love it because that blue turquoisey color just fills you up, and it's lovely to put your hands around. I'm going to feature today the blue pea flower, the hawthorn, and the green tea. So same as you have that green tea. And this is a real huge blend for supporting brain power. So that was the other thing I wanted to highlight. So blue pea flower is known for enhancing cognitive function, improving memory recall, and reducing oxidative stress. Combined with hawthorn, hawthorn is about heart healing, courageous love, and setting energetic boundaries.
Hmm.
And we haven't really talked about that so much, but it's an interesting idea when you start to think about how much, how often do you expend things, or people come into the room that take your energy, and that does make a difference on how the body's going to function, and then where the brain goes to support that. All right. And the last little bit about hawthorn I just had to bring up is it has to do with the fairy realm.
Oh,
It makes a link for us. And I know that's an area that you love to dabble in
hmm.
with the work that you do. And so, yeah, I had to bring that up. And we have this beautiful, right outside my window here is a hawthorn tree that
Mm.
has an intertwining trunk, and then out into this beautiful array. So when we get all these different colors between the flowers and the berries as the season goes on. So, all right, with that, green tea. So just reminding people that green tea is an opportunity for us to have a gentle caffeine. It improves our focus, our calmness, our mental endurance. And it is a way for us to really nurture our systems and empower them. And so we both chose green tea today. And the affirmation that goes with this tea is energy expands when we look at the horizon and take a deep breath with the ocean. So most people will be thinking they'll take a deep breath, but when we move that into a creative thought of how do we get balance and flow, this is a great way to bring it in. And the
Yeah.
last thing I had to share with you, Lauren, this um, when I went to grab the mug today, that's why I don't have it to be able to show the turquoise blue, although in this light today it might just appear dark. But I have this incredible saucer
Ooh.
and cup, but it's covered in poppies. And poppies are all about creative expression. And
Mm,
so I thought I want to bring that to the table today because we really want to open up how people are thinking about creativity and where that could take them on their journeys.
yeah.
So thank you for coming.
Thank you for
Cheers.
having me. Cheers.
And as you're listening to the podcast, this is your moment to either infuse the water that you have with you with the power of what we've brought to the table today. Or if you're able to make that cup of tea, to think about how you can really connect in with the herbs. While you listen to the podcast, we have set it up so you're getting a healing session. And you can have a little bit of a tea ritual if you like, where you can, first of all, slow down by sipping. Um, Give yourself a chance to arrive to this conversation and then think about, while we're talking, the things that your mind might wander to. As we give our ideas, you might go, oh, and then that idea might be a great thing to write down and just reflect on and savor. And then the other part is with the tea, hold it into the hands, feeling the warmth of it, particularly since you and I are now into the snow season. And then notice the aroma, the color, the subtle sweetness, and allow your senses to really come alive. And that's where creativity starts to bloom.
Mhm.
And so, with that, I'm going to dive into the topic for our podcast. All right. So, first, we want to look at creativity in the brain and what the research is saying about that. So, Lauren, you've spent this last month doing a little dive into creativity and dementia, and what has stood out for you?
Um, I think what stands out for me most is that creativity seems to activate the brain in a more holistic way than a lot of the other things that I've been learning to do for my brain. And I think it builds on those other ways as well. But it really is fascinating to me because I could feel the difference in my head, in my brain,
Mm-hmm.
as I've been getting deeper and deeper into preparing to start writing, to actually start writing this new book. And a friend of mine asked me about how the writing was going, and I said, "Oh, it's great! It's so much fun! I'm having such fun." He said, "It really lights you up," and I thought, it really does. It lights me up. It makes me happy. I feel lighter. But also I feel like all the pistons are firing at the right time and the right combination and that's when I got curious and I suggested to you we talk about creativity because I could tell a difference between before I was really immersed in this big creativity project, which writing a novel is always a big project, and when I wasn't doing conscious creative work. Um, and I just was kind of fascinated. And that's why I wanted to go educate myself a little bit about how it's affecting the brain. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yes, I'm glad we're talking about it.
And it's so interesting that you can sense the difference because I
hmm
don't we have that monkey thought, we have busy mind, we have creative thoughts, we have intuitive thoughts, but I don't think people ever really think, how is my brain functioning
I,
and when
I
is it feeling different?
I find that I am somewhat unique in that I am so inwardly focused and have been my whole life that I am probably more aware of the internal workings of my body and how that feels than most people are. Um, but I also have very much going through menopause. Had brain fog. And so I began to understand what that felt like and what it meant. Because there is a feeling to it. If you kind of tune in, and I don't have to close my eyes and concentrate anymore, I can just kind of check in with it. But like right now, my brain is all lit up. It's like, oh, this is fun, But there is actually a feeling when your brain is working well as when it's as opposed to sluggish. And if you think about your body, you kind of know if your body's tired. And if your body's
Mhm.
sluggish, your coordination might be a little off, or you just want to sit and do nothing. But our brain has the same kinds of energetic stages, I guess is a good word for it. And you can learn to kind of to notice it, but you do have to be intentional about it at first.
Mhm.
Um, and really, I just go, does my head, do I have a headache? Does my brain feel like it's bored? Is there like a whole lot of really cool stuff bouncing around in there? Am I ruminating on past things that are not happy? That's usually for me a very sluggish brain. Am I excited about something? That's a very active brain to me. So it's something that I think other people could do, but it's not something we're taught to do. And I just happened to learn how to do it. I think being an energy healer, I'm particularly attuned to the energy of the body, whether it's mine or somebody else's. And so that has helped me to really kind of fine tune how I can feel into how happy my brain is today. And my husband laughs at me because sometimes I go, God, my brain is so tired. And he's like, what does that even mean? You know? So that, it's fascinating to me to learn about how the creativity particularly does light up both sides of your brain. And that's something that I did not sort of consciously know, but just a little bit of science. I'm not going to go deep because I don't remember the details always. But between the left and the right brain, you have what's called the corpus callosum. And that's this white matter that kind of connects both sides of the brain so they can cooperate. I am so intuitive that my logic brain is a little lethargic, you know. But when I'm doing creative work, today even I was looking for some research on a setting that I want to use for this book, and so I had Google and I had Googled all these things and I was looking at maps and stuff, but the creative side or the intuitive side of my head was going, "Ooh, that would make a good place right there. It's very isolated. You can make up your own story, you know." It's like so both sides were working at the same time. I'm looking at what in this world is real and how can I use that in this story in a creative way. And so I had a sort of a great example of both sides working together to come up with a creative idea for where I can actually set this story. And I find that with even if I'm doing character work, I have lists of things that I need, they need to have a conflict, they need to have, a past. And I start thinking about, what mine was, and then that triggers some other ideas over here. So I'm tapping into actual memories, but now bringing them forth in this new sort of way of looking at it and how I can use that for a character. So that dual brain firing, that cooperative brain. And if you can't see me in the video, if you're just listening, but I'm literally crossing my hands across each other. That cross communication is really powerful for the brain and the brain's health and its ability to build new pathways between ideas and neurons. And so that was
Mhm.
particularly reinforcing to me the power of creativity in terms of brain health and resilience.
Mhm. And so you can see how people who do crafts,
Hmm.
knitting and the crocheting, where that you have to have that integration happening in order
Yes.
for the craft to even work.
Yes.
Um, that becomes an exercise in really keeping the hemispheres working together.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other place I find that in my life is I think I've mentioned this in probably every conversation we've done, but the line dancing class that I take,
Hmm.
because you're moving in all directions during a single dance and your feet are doing different things and sometimes they're crossing over each other and they're turning around. You're doing all of these things that require, that whole brain to understand what you want to do and get your feet to do it at the same time with the music, you know,
Hmm.
and not bumping into the person standing next to you, So there's a lot of that, I think, in crafts and any sort of whole body movements. Um, uh, and even in reading, we read left to right, and that's going to trigger different parts of your brain,
Mhm.
so different. Yeah, it's just I always love it when I intuitively kind of think this is probably true, and then I find out from science or from studies that yeah, what I was intuiting is true. It is creativity takes both sides of the brain to work
Mhm.
to I mean that's what creativity really is spawned by.
Mhm. Mhm. And I'm thinking about, for some people, reading left to right actually shuts them down,
Hmm.
and there isn't a connection across. And that's when people who crawl into bed to read and they last like a half a page, and immediately the whole body is shut down. So there isn't
Hmm.
an integrated process happening. So there is that also happening, just to be aware of. Because as
Yeah,
you
yeah.
described,
That's
the
my
brain
husband.
being tired, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think I just had this sort of aha moment when you said that. For me, when I read, I create a movie in my brain.
Hmm.
So I'm using my logic brain to interpret the words, but I'm using my intuitive brain to create a movie for myself.
Hmm.
And I've heard a lot of people, do that, especially with fiction.
Hmm.
And so you just explained the difference between me and my husband in terms of reading. you know? So yeah, so I think it is individual, and as all of these things are,
Hmm.
but that it is a possible thing of reading left to right, or right
Hmm.
to left, depending on the language you're reading. Yeah.
And so one of the things then is, as you were researching that neuroplasticity of the brain, it
Hmm.
isn't static. It doesn't just stay there. The things that we do does impact it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really important for the resilience because we can create a connection, but if we don't keep using the connection, it will kind of dissolve and fall away. And so that's where to some degree repetition comes in. Like if you're learning a language and you repeat the dialogue or whatever, it helps to build the connection between being able to say it and knowing what words to say. Um, so I think it is interesting that we can do these things that are just part of our day, but they're
Hmm.
actually reinforcing connections in the brain. And
Hmm.
that's probably why we have muscle memory, is my guess. Because if we do something, and again, comes back to dancing to me, if I do the same dance over and over again, I get to where I don't have to think about it very much. My body just knows what to do. But
Hmm.
it's firing in the brain.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it's this rebuilding connection. I was thinking about this as I re-listened to our nature podcast from last month. Um, Firing as many different ways with one neuron is going to give it resilience because you could lose if say you got 10 connections to once to color, once to music, once to, an emotion that you had, once to a smell that you had. We talked about the five senses. If you have all those multiple different connections to other neurons that collect that other information, then if you lose one or two of those, you still got a pretty strong memory.
Hmm.
You've got room to have some atrophy or to have some loss, and then hopefully to build additional connections
Hmm.
to it, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's all of these things and it's really becoming very clear to me. All of the the ways that I've changed my lifestyle to help my brain be healthier, help my body be healthier, um, come down to how many neurons can I fire and how many new connections can I make?
Hmm.
And creativity really comes in with those new connections because a lot of
Hmm.
creativity is how do I take this weird thing, this one thing that's in my life and think of a new way to use it. I'm
Hmm.
constantly rearranging my kitchen because it's like this could be organized better. You know? So it's using your brain is important and doing it from a playful, joyful place, which creativity often is,
Hmm.
um, just makes it more fun.
Yeah.
I'm exercising my brain by crocheting tonight. Yay! It's
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So all of these things, but creativity was the one that seemed to really join the two sides of the brain for me, for my understanding of it. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah. I hope that
And then
answered it.
you did say, when you brought in the idea of dance and building those patterns of movement.
Hmm.
So I did want to bring in the way that movement fuels the brain so that people don't think they can just create an activity that will keep the brain busy. Because I think a
Hmm.
lot of people, the crossword puzzles, um, Sudoku, um, math equations, computing things with the brain is one way to be active.
Hmm.
But if we don't move, we're also not feeding the brain because it's waiting for information to come to it. But if we don't feed it anything, it's only got what's rolling around in there at that moment.
Yeah, you're only reinforcing those one particular kinds of connections. I
Mm-hmm.
do those too, but not exclusively.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I
Um,
wanted to move us then into the movement idea and how moving the body can help change the way the brain's functioning. And you're doing some of that with the line dancing. You've been doing it with the movement and music class that we've been
yes.
offering online. And that's giving that creativity through. And I'm just going to bring up a couple of the things that I always try to make sure I have included. So the way that the shoulder seams and the hip seams move. And I know people won't be thinking about that. They might think about the arms move and the legs move, but it's the expansion and the contraction movements that are going to feed the most amount of information back to the brain. And then that's reaching and expanding how we interact in our world. Um,
Mhm.
and so when those seams are moving fully and fluidly, the brain is receiving information about where you are in space, as you were talking about that coordination piece, and also then that the proprioceptive system. And a lot of people think balance might come, it does come from the feet, comes from the center core, and then it comes from right in the middle of the actual brain cranium piece, and that part can't function without you moving in space somehow to know where that is. So I just wanted to bring that forward for people as they're thinking about what activities might they be working in,
Mhm.
because it's easy to go for a walk and hold your mug, could be your water bottle, and not move your arms at all. And you're talking to somebody, but while you're, maybe you're holding the phone in one hand, maybe you're talking to an actual person, and you've got your water bottle in the other, but the shoulder seams aren't moving. You have
Mhm.
hip seams moving, but not the shoulder seams. That's not going to be feeding the brain in the same way. And so just to think about, am I fully engaged in a movement pattern as I'm partaking in whatever activity that I'm doing? And then what does that mean?
Mhm.
Um, so I just wanted to bring that forward. Do you want to talk a little bit maybe about how you feel after you've done some of these activities?
Yeah, I was a person who really did not between the end of high school and uh 2025.
That's a while.
That's a big long while. I really wasn't terribly interested in activity other than I liked walking and I liked hiking, but my knees would often be a problem when I was hiking. So we didn't do a lot of challenging hikes, I would say. Um, and a lot of my walking was walking the dogs, which is really mostly about standing around while they sniff or poop, It's like, but when I got the genetic test back and it verified what I kind of already knew, but was like, maybe it's not true. Um, I really did dive into the first thing was I got to get my body moving. And because I was really I could tell that my body needed to move. I just wasn't motivated at all. I didn't grow up, around an athletic family or anything like that. Um, But since then I had already started doing the line dancing, but I hadn't really like fully committed to it. Now I'm fully committed. And then I added Zumba, which to me was a really big challenge because cardio has always been my bugaboo. It's like I don't want to sweat, I don't want to have to huff and puff, blah blah blah. But Zumba was is dance based and I like to dance. So I kept saying, I'm just going to go dance. And if I sweat some, that's great. Yeah. But it's turned out to be really something I look forward to because my body and therefore my brain and my mood all feel better. They feel more energized when I get done with that. Even if I'm physically like that was a challenge, it's
Mm-hmm.
still, I find that I can make it through the day without just having to collapse on the couch at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and have caffeine.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I know that that's been, I look forward to it now. And in fact, we have very little snow on the ground, but the schools were closed. And so, like my Zumba class was canceled for the day and stuff. It's like, and I really kind of miss it, though I took advantage of that time by writing more today. So I kind of came at it from a different direction. But so that's been really interesting, and I just because I have never liked exercising, and now I'm looking forward to it. The other piece of both of line dancing, Zumba, and then I've also started going back to play pickleball, though not consistently yet. They're all social, and that lights up another part of your brain. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to remember names. So I've got that stored on one side of my brain, but I'm remembering that they're really good at dancing or they really like that song or something on the other side of my brain. Um, and so that social connection, and this is true for dementia, is social connections are really important for keeping the brain healthy. Because I think a lot of that is because the elderly tend to get very isolated.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm bringing in that social too, but I'm doing it mostly through exercise classes, and that's sort of a double goodness there. And I am making friends. People know me. Hey, Lauren, all those kind of lovely things.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the movement has really been, shall I say, life changing. I sleep better. My mood is better. I have less anxiety. I haven't been a big anxious person in the last 10 or 15 years, really since my mom passed in 2019. But the world makes me a little anxious now and then. If I get into a low mood and start thinking about the Alzheimer gene that I carry, I can get pretty anxious about it. But being around people who are lifting me up because they're always, in good cheer when we get together for classes, moving my body has also just lifted everything up. And it's not what I ever expected out of doing exercise that often think is challenging. But then we have the Tai Chi too, which I've been doing with you through your music and movement. And that's really been it's really been lovely because I always feel like I've reconnected pieces of my body to each other after that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned through that to be a little more aware of my muscles. I'm very aware of my brain, but not so much of my muscles. So I've been really tuning into the muscles that we're working on in any given class. And that's been an eye-opening experience too. And so all of that adds more brain connections, more neurons firing, and less stress and better sleep. And all of those are good if you have, dementia or Alzheimer's looming over you or, hanging out behind you somewhere. Um, so for me, the movement has actually been a really important and really profound part of the whole, cocktail of changes I've made. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it does seem to spur on my creativity. I've noticed just in the last week or two, I'm really much more excited to get down to the creative work that I'm doing, whether it's crochet or it's the book. Those are the two big ones that I'm involved in at the moment. And my attention is more focused and my ability to stay with it longer is
Mm-hmm.
there. I can't, I'm losing the word for that,
Yeah.
So I am noticing that the physical has had very positive effects on pretty much anything my brain is trying to do.
Mhm.
So,
Interesting, isn't it? And
yeah,
then you think that creativity, because when you do sit down, rather than trying to come up with the idea while you're sitting down, your brain's already circulating it while you're moving.
yeah,
And then when you do sit down, it was already up there formulating, and then it's like, boop, here we go.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like I already knew what I was going to be working on today because I was working on it yesterday. And usually I forget what I was doing by between yesterday and today because I get up and leave and I don't think about it again. But my brain is actually continuously working on it now. And that's when I know I'm starting to hit my stride with a writing project.
Mm-hmm.
When my brain is so intrigued, going, okay, what are we going to write today? You know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's when it gets really fun. It's because it does just kind of flow through me. I don't have to effort at figuring out what's next. I can just let it flow out. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
magical.
So I just want to come back to a couple of things that you've said so that people pick up on those ideas. And one was by doing the movement aspects, signing yourself up for classes where you have to be responsible to show up,
Hmm.
which is accountability is an important piece.
Yes.
But that extra piece about the connection with other people and building a community.
Hmm.
And when we go back to science, then we're going back to the studies about when you get together with other people for the intention of healing, then the enzymes in the body create that space and they start to go there. And so your feeling of by putting all that activity in, creating those new networks of people to associate with, it's just completely transforming beyond the brain, but
Hmm.
it's taking you to a different quality of life.
Yes.
And you could easily have said, I have this gene, oh my goodness, and then just prepare for it.
Yeah.
you know, quality of life does not change there. It's just
Yeah.
going to start to decline.
Right.
But you've completely transformed it into this richness
Yeah.
that
That's a
envelopes
good
you.
word. That's a really good word. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just anyways, it's just so beautiful to see how all of that can transpire. It's by choice because it'd be so easy to go one way and you chose to go the other, and still, you have days when you don't feel like, I really don't feel like going to class today,
Yeah.
but you know that the three friends that you meet there every day,
They're gonna say, "Where were you?"
and you have nothing to say except I didn't feel like coming today. That's not
Yeah.
going to happen. So you
Yeah.
off you go, right? Because you're going
Yeah.
to be accountable to that, and you're immediately lifted up by that.
Well, and the other piece just occurred to me that has come with that is I I was always trying to be the best at whatever I did. Like my whole life I was raised to be, you got to be the top of your class, you got to get an A, you got to do this. And I lived up to the expectations of my parents and, the community around me. But I have really given myself permission to not do my classes perfectly.
Mhm.
I can go and I'll do the best I can today. And some days I can, especially in Zumba, I can have my arms up and doing all kinds of stuff. And other days it's like, no, I can't go above my shoulder. I just don't have it in me today. But I'm still moving. I'm still there. I'm still in the music. I'm still with the vibe of the whole class. And so it's still worthwhile. But I really did have to consciously give myself permission to not have to do it perfectly.
Mhm.
And of course, nobody's doing any of this perfectly. But it
Yeah.
was a stress that I used to put on myself a lot, and
Mhm.
I've chosen not to. That's
Yeah.
that's a conscious choice on my part now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And it's interesting because with Tai Chi, if somebody has an injury or they're trying to recover from something, then you want to do it at 40% effort.
mhm.
So that permission to not be perfect
Yeah.
allows you that maybe you drop from that 150% that
Hmm.
most people try to function at down to maybe an 80%.
Hmm.
And then when you think about you have the days that the energy isn't there, and it is okay to be operating at 40%. And what's in Tai Chi, when we drop down to 40%, everyone says the same thing when they get themselves down to very small movements, very light. And then
Mm,
all of a sudden they're like, I can feel the energy.
yeah.
It's like, yeah. And when you're working at 150%, you don't feel any energy because you're just expending.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no opportunity for that energy to grow and expand, but you can feel it at 40%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's yeah, that's great. I love that. I'm gonna
Yeah.
remember that one.
Well, and I'll say 40% and people will look at me and then they'll go, uh-huh. And I can see just by the look on their face, okay, you're not going to be doing that. So I often will have to, and I can do it by seated, because then you can take the movement down even more
hmm
than when you're standing. But um, watching people's faces as we just go smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And then it's like, is that what 40% would feel like? Most of us don't know that because we're just always overachieving to
Yeah.
meet the other's expectations for
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
don't want to let anybody else down either, So
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so now that leads us to another part of the conversation, which we want to do is you added a whole bunch of music into your life. There's,
hmm
there's going for a walk in nature and plugging in earphones, blocking nature out, but listening to your favorite tunes. And there's a whole other thing to be surrounded by a stereo system that is feeding frequency into your body. And now you have that all coming in along with the movement. Do you
hmm
want to talk a little bit about the power of what adding that music has felt for you?
Well, I always have music on me. If I'm in my car, I've got my music on, whatever you can tell my mood by what I'm listening to, or if I need to be uplifted, I'll have something like that. It is interesting because the music that is played in the two different kinds of classes that I take, that where I'm surrounded by music, one is mostly country music, which is not something, I mean, it's something I'm familiar with, but it's not one of my preferred genres. And the other is mostly Latin music, which is great for doing active dancing to, but is also a genre that I don't have a lot of familiarity with. And so it's actually really interesting because they are bringing in frequencies that I'm not usually exposed to. And I hadn't really thought about that until just now. Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
But I'm very aware of the beat of the music. And both of those genres have pretty strong beats so that you can dance to them, right? I actually used to be a disco dancer back in the 70s. Um, so for me, I don't notice the music as much as the beat, and the beat is what really lights me up. And I especially like it when you can almost feel it in your body, the beat's, strong enough to do that. Um, but it also is part of the automatic movements, I think. Well, okay. I took tap and ballet for 5 years when I was in elementary school. Hated every minute of it. I've been a square dancer for years in high school. I've done all of this dancing, and then in my adult life, there hasn't been a lot of room for dancing, so it's coming back to me. And I was a very poor musician in the band in college, so I have a lot of music background. And I was raised with a father who loved classical music, so I got exposed to that live and recorded a lot. Music always influences me. I think it does all of us, actually, especially in terms of your mood. Sometimes you want to match the mood, sometimes you want to change the mood. Well, that's part of why I'm so energized by my classes is because all of the music is upbeat. It's a lot of it has really good lyrics that go with it that, are uplifting or hopeful or, we got this kind of music. And so that piece of it is really something I hadn't completely considered as being part of the whole mix of why those classes are so powerful. And certainly the music in the one in the Tai Chi and the music and movement class, that one is really interesting because we do things without the music first. You teach us the movements and walk, and have us go through that. And I find this true in dance class too, because we do the same thing. We go through the movement first and then we put the music on. The body movement is always easier to do with the music. It's like your body just wants to flow with it. And so the thinking that has to go on, especially in line dancing, um, that's going on, but my body is just like, oh, we got this. We got this. We're going to flow through this. Oh, you're going to turn around here and it's going to be fine. It's like, so it really does have a very positive impact on me for sure, and I think on everybody.
Mhm.
We in Zumba we get to whooping and hollering, all of this. We bring voice into it, without singing
Mhm.
along necessarily.
Mhm.
So it lifts everybody up, and I think that's part of probably why that kind of music is part of those kinds of classes is because it brings a cohesion to the group.
Mhm.
We're all moving together in sync. We may not be perfect, but it's close. And we're all being lifted by the same frequencies.
Mhm.
And that frequency, I know this as an energy healer, the frequencies affect your own personal frequencies. And I love it when the ones that are around me are higher than what I'm existing in at that moment, because we do what's called in training. And we want not consciously, but our body wants to be at the highest frequency we can comfortably hold. And if you're below that, your body's kind of like, what the hell? You know? And so and especially in a group where you're raising the vibration all together with that music, with the movement, with the intentions that everybody comes there with, it's really powerful. And I leave there tired and sweaty, but I also leave there with a smile on my face.
Mhm.
And I come home, and by the time I get home, and it's like a 10-minute drive, I'm like, I want some lunch, you know, but I'm also ready to get up and do something else in the afternoon instead of being lethargic all afternoon.
Mhm.
So there's that. I also just want to add that when I was learning to write novels and really I had kids still, and my mom was around, and all this stuff going on. So getting into that focus space that I have to be in for really deep creativity, I use binaural beats. And I often met a friend at a grocery store cafe, of all places. We would meet and for an hour in the morning and write together because it's that combined frequency, right? And I would pop in my earbuds and I would put on a binaural beats. I have a couple of apps, and I would choose the frequency of that based on what I wanted to feel. So if I was feeling lethargic, I wanted to feel more energized. If I was feeling a little scattered, I'd try for focus. And it was such a beautiful practice that I wrote 6 books that way. You know? And I haven't had to do that here because I work in this office that I'm in right now, and it is my sanctuary, and I already have that quiet, calm focus established in this space. But yeah, it's something I think we intuitively bring into our lives, music to help with mood or set the scene for something. But it's also really good if you can do it consciously, which I was doing with the binaural beats, is consciously choosing which frequency I wanted to attune to.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, that kind of stuff is all around us,
Mhm.
and I forget to think about it in terms of frequency and how it's affecting my body and my brain.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
always learn something when we have these conversations. And I love to learn, so that's great.
Well, and I do know, with my Tai Chi classes, we were taught not to have music, but Tai Chi, was done outside in nature.
Yeah.
So you would have the sounds of nature that would be filtering in you and lifting you up, and
Mhm.
not really realizing that's what was happening. When you're in a room, and you're in a rec center or something like that, there isn't a frequency that's really there. And what
Mhm.
we've noticed is as soon as we add the music in, there's a shift in how the body responds.
Yeah.
Now, not all music is equal, we've also discovered. So
Mhm.
there is some music is not going to enhance things, and it might hinder how some muscles want to move. So
Mhm.
being very specific about the music is important. So like you said, gathering up those binaural beats, so valuable. I
Mhm.
have a very specific playlist that I'll use for Tai Chi, um, that I know will entrain everyone and we'll all feel the energy of it.
Mhm.
And we've tried other pieces of music, but it's not always been the same. So I've gone back to that playlist knowing I
Hmm.
can trust every song on that playlist
Yeah.
to lift us up how
Yeah.
we need. But that next piece is that entrainment. And I notice this too with teaching when I remove language. So, yes, you give the instructions, you verbalize them, everybody figures out how they're going to move. And then they say, keep talking because we want you to lead us through. But if I remove my voice and the music is on, we don't require language. And language requires you have to interpret it before it gets to the body to where you're going to move. And this
Hmm.
way, you're just moving and you're
Yeah.
moving energetically together. And
Yeah.
yeah,
It's remarkable because you will lead us through, talking us through this, and I'm practicing as we're doing it. And my brain's going, I can't keep track of this. I don't know where's that hand supposed to be? What's and then the music starts and I give myself permission to not be perfect. And then my body just it knows where it wants to flow and how it wants to move. And if it's not a perfect, version of that movement, I don't care. You know,
yeah,
that's for later. But it really, I mean, that has very much been my experience that once the music starts, the body just knows what to do. It just wants to flow.
mhm,
Now, I might have to see, are we turning around yet? Kind of thing.
yeah,
But especially when we're seated, it's much easier for me because I'm new to all of this,
yeah,
to just allow my upper body and my hips to flow with where they need to be.
yeah, yeah.
Workable.
So to recap for those who thinking about the music that they have going on in their lives, so the sound frequency can shift brainwave states. We've got color frequency,
Hmm.
so what colors we're with, but also sometimes the music, depending on what key it's in, those keys all relate to colors. And so that color frequency can come in, which can balance emotions, give us clarity, calm the nervous system. And then we have this vibration piece. So if you do put earbuds in, it's going into the eardrum, but it is not encasing the
Yeah.
whole biofield and the body. So just to keep that in mind, because the vibration that is surrounding our bodies is going to be very important for physically and energetically creating pathways that'll support memory, mood, and creativity. So I just wanted to bring that to the forefront. So if you're thinking about you want to add music in as a way to enhance things, then think about how you want to do that.
Yeah.
And with the creativity, then what we've been looking at is then we've got sound, color, movement, sensory experiences, and emotional resonance. So it becomes a real multi-dimensional
Yeah.
place. And I really enjoy the fact that you've gone back to writing and how you can notice it in your preparation for how you are to be able to focus into your writing and really dive into your topics because you have what you were doing before to compare
Mhm.
to, and
Yeah.
it's lovely to hear that difference for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always been stressful for me to write when I once I had a contract on something. And this time I'm not stressed. I'm not even thinking about how it's going to be published. If it's going to be published, I don't care. I'm doing this for fun.
Mhm.
And that I think some of that mindset comes from all of these other things that we've been talking about and how they have impressed upon me or imprinted upon me this sort of we're going to go with the flow. You know, we're looking for brain resilience and everything else is just, extra. So
It's a lovely way to put a novel together.
yeah, exactly, exactly. I did want to just add one thing about the music is I've
Mm-hmm.
always known that I'd much rather hear live music than recorded music.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because you are in that vibration of the
Mm-hmm.
instruments
Yeah.
when you're live. Like I said, I was in the band for 4 years when I was in university, and as a flute player, I was always at the front of the band when we were in practice, in the studio and stuff. And I was surrounded by all of these other instruments. So I sit like right in the center of it, and it was a joy. We were such a joyful group I mean, we were always having fun and we loved the music, but it was also just we all got to be friends. It was a cohesion through
Hmm.
that music that we created together, but you also got that wonderful vibration of of the
Hmm.
being with the live instruments.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's a joy that I forget about, that live music is really amazing
Hmm.
and different. I mean, it's recording music is great, but live music is different.
Yeah.
Just what you were talking about, with the difference between the earbuds and the music around you, where you receiving the vibration of it.
Yeah, and depending on who's playing the music, they
Hmm.
can be interpreting the room without realizing they're interpreting the room, so taking the energy of all the people in the room and bringing that into, and particularly here, we've got all the Cape Breton fiddle music.
Oh yeah.
And, if you have an audience that's not tapping their toe, they're just sitting,
Hmm.
the poor fiddler is, it's going to be a struggle
Yeah.
for a tune that they know very, very well,
Hmm.
but to be inspired by it.
Yeah.
But the more everybody starts to tap their toe, which is a compliment to the fiddler, their bodies start rocking, those
Hmm.
bodies start healing, and that fiddler is responding to that. And they start, their feet, their whole foot pattern is going, and pretty soon you have this big explosion.
Yeah.
And that's the power of the healing power of Celtic music,
Yes.
is that whole physical involvement that everybody becomes a part of. Um,
Yeah.
and for me, classical music, if I go to the theater, I love it, but I will fall asleep. And then
Oh.
I will get the whole thing will come to me, but I'll be unconscious.
Mhm.
And I learned to accept the fact that that's the way it was going to be, because I would try to struggle with it. It was like, I don't really want to be the one that falls asleep at the symphony. But then I would just be, I just let it wash over me and
Yeah.
enjoy. And that's, again, that's another way that the body's going to be responding. So,
Yeah. Very relaxing, obviously.
yeah. Oh my goodness. All right. So if we go to one other little piece that we brought in, which is about the five senses,
Hmm.
because we've been talking about how all these pieces light up. Um, your experience from diving into the creativity, what would you say the five senses have done as a result of adding these creative components? Would you say they've picked up where you become more aware?
That's a really good question. Hmm. I know that when I'm like I've been looking for a good place to set this story. And to me, that's very much five senses. And I have been led once again to the Highlands of Scotland. And I think it's because I love that place, and but I have been there. I know what it feels like to be there. I know what it smells like. I know how the earth feels under my feet. I know what the skies look like, what the birds sound like. I've got all of those sense memories of a trip that I literally took probably 20 years ago now. Um, but it's still alive for me. I think in part because I wrote six books and two novellas where I immersed myself in the culture and the the place. So I know from that, my creativity has been definitely influenced by my personal five senses experiences of the Highlands of Scotland, but also by my experiences in Maine because it's so similar geologically and even in terms of what grows there, very similar kinds of places. And I'm getting goosebumps as I talk about that because that's my truth bumps, as some of my clients like to say. But they're so closely connected in just even in geology. From that point of view, it has definitely helped. I know also that five senses are coming into this because I always use myself and my own emotional feelings for my characters. And so, the protagonist is always some version of me. I don't do it on purpose, but that's just the way it comes out. Sometimes it's the bad girl side of me, and sometimes it's the the prissy side of me. But it's always based on I use my own physical experiences as well as emotional experiences to create these stories. And I don't sit down and write it like a memoir. I don't even most of the time don't even do it consciously. In looking back, I can see what I've done.
Mhm.
But so my five sense experiences of my life and my all of these various places that I have been in the world, those all come into play when I'm writing, but it's not always conscious. So I had to stop and think about it, you know.
Mhm.
But when I do step back and look at it, I think all writers do that. I think artists probably do that, you know, and you know how they created a painting and what the colors, how that impacted their senses, you know, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, and I think people, you know, you decorate your home from your own five senses. What makes you feel good in your home?
Mhm.
And the one that I noticed that I don't think I do, but I have noticed because we just went out and bought some new furniture last weekend. We don't have it yet, but we picked out a new couch, and part of why I picked it out is because I liked the way it felt.
Mhm.
Yeah, not the sitting on it, but the way the material felt on it.
Yeah.
And that's how I shop for clothes too. I do color first, and then how does it feel? You know? So, so I think anybody doing anything creative, even if it's crochet or it's, you know, you're doing Tai Chi, you're going to bring your own sense experience into that moment. You might not like the music, for example, and it's harder to move with that. But if it's something you really love, you're going to move very easily with it. So I think it's really sort of threaded into everything you do creatively, your five senses, what your experiences are. And I mean, I want to go back to Scotland now and refresh mine, but also go to places I hadn't been before that I might be able to pull into my stories. And you can
Mhm.
bet that I will be taking pictures of the colors, how things are arranged, the geometry of the place. I will consciously be smelling it and making notes in my journal about, you know, whatever I was smelling. It's the sheep or it's the the cows or the heather or whatever it might be. And I'm going to use all of that in whatever I write going forward. Because even if I'm not setting it in Scotland, there's going to be something from that that will trigger some creative idea in another story. Um,
Mhm.
it's one of the joys of being a storyteller is that you get to kind of soak this up. Little story. Up in Maine, there's a place near where we go up there. There's a place called Reversing Falls. And it's we're right on the, you know, near the Bay of Fundy in that area. So it's a big tides. And literally water washes in one way and then it washes out the other way over rocks. So you get, you know, falls in each direction. And there was one day a few years ago, I was sitting on a rock and my husband was there and our kids were there and they were adults, but they were there and they were off scrambling around rocks somewhere. And I was just sitting watching the seals play in the water and just like in feeling the air and listening to the water and seeing these joyful animals and my husband looks over at me and goes, "You're writing now, aren't you?" And I went, "Yeah, I am actually." So it's the five senses are how you bring a story to life, actually. You know, how you
Mhm.
connect with other people through that written page. So yeah, it's very important to creativity.
Mhm. Mhm. And so as people are thinking about in their own lives, they might be aware of sight, 'cause that's usually what most people,
Mhm.
and then maybe a little bit with sound. Tactile might not be
Hmm.
as obvious, you know. Yes, you know what the steering wheel feels like, or you know what your fingers on the computer feel like, but what do you know about the textures in your house and bringing things alive in a
Hmm.
tactile way? And then smell and taste very often disappear. Um, and for some people too, if they've been plugged up and they don't always have a sense of smell,
Hmm.
you know, to stop and think about what does that fresh bread actually smell like? What does the pizza smell like coming out of the oven? What is the soup? You know, and just ways that you can start to bring that in. And I bring that up because we just wanted to wrap that around some of the science for the brain. So creating stored sensory memories, having stabilizing emotional patterns, because that happens when you've just as you were describing even the seals, right?
Yeah.
Immediately the joy that comes to that.
Yeah.
And expanding creativity through embodied awareness. and then supporting the presence, which is essential for brain health. And the last is reducing fear and anxiety and future focused stress. So, as you were talking about, you could easily go down that niggly bit of thinking about what is going to be possible. And
Hmm.
instead, you can just completely focus it around to a different future,
Hmm.
a different, the things you want to have with the quality of life.
Yes.
So, so I just
Yeah.
want to bring that around for people listening so that they can start to think about how am I doing that? Could I be doing more of it? And if I started to embody more of it, what kinds of things might I be doing as a result?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a huge stress reduction. And I swear stress is the thing that ages all of us. I mean, all parts
Mhm.
of us the fastest. And the brain
Mhm.
is seems to be particularly affected by that. So yeah, not focusing on, what's going to be happening 10 years from now, or how there's no way I can get this thing done that I really want to do. Instead, I go, well, I don't have to do it perfectly. What can I do today? How can I find a community that might help support me? To me, that's always important. Even for writing books, I had to have a community of writers, and I still do. Um, how can I shift from, oh, woe is me to, what did I learn from that? And how can I change it if I want to change it? Or how can I use that wisdom as I move forward? There's lots of ways to change your attitude. You can make choices. I never believed I could make choices about my emotions, but I've learned that I absolutely can, and I choose now how I want to feel, and then I take action to reinforce that or to support it. And I don't do it 100% well, I don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. And that's,
Mhm.
I think creativity really is a lovely way to practice imperfection
Mhm.
because, you never feel like what you created was perfect. And okay, but do you still love it? Did you have fun doing it? Did it light you up? All of that is very healthy for your brain and for the rest of your body, on top of everything else we've talked about today, which is a lot.
It is an interesting way to go through creativity and for
Mhm.
people to realize how different parts of their day are involved in different creative outlets
Yeah.
and creative opportunities. And maybe those opportunities have been sitting there and they've never actually taken them.
Hmm.
They've thought about, oh, I could do that, or it would be lovely if, and
Yeah.
then carried on with the same habit patterns.
Yeah.
But like you, there was a reason for you to say, I've got to take action and I've got to make a difference. And
Hmm.
I think for anybody who wants to be on a wellness journey, we sometimes do need that check in
Yeah.
that makes
Yeah.
us go.
Wake up call.
The wake
Yeah.
up call is there, and then that next piece is I do have power, I
Yes.
do have capability, and it is my choice. And if I've chosen to not take action, then that was my choice,
Yeah.
and then my life will be where it is.
Right.
But if you have taken it and the quality of life can change, my goodness, how much fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, I got a lot of living I want to do still.
yeah.
A lot of books I want to write, a lot of crocheting I want to do, a lot of, hanging out with friends and seeing, with my family too, my kids. I
Mhm.
want to be around and be all there.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
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 So can I just add one more thing before we finish?
Yeah.
I just want to say that, creativity is not sequestered in the arts as we think of them. Creativity can be, how you decorate your house, or if you are a cook and you like to, wing it, or put your own flair on something. That's creative. That's creative. If you rearrange your closets or your cupboards in your kitchen, that's creative. You're
Mhm.
problem solving. And how can I get these things to fit better, kind of thing. All of that is creativity. We as human beings are constantly creating. Some of us get lucky enough to create people, you know?
Mhm.
We're always creating. And so don't get you're fixed that you got to be a writer or an artist or a musician or, whatever. Whatever lights you up and makes you feel like you have done something with your brain that's not in a rut. I want to say that's creativity. So,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think, yeah, because there's artistry and there's
mhm,
creativity.
mhm.
Sometimes they're interspersed. You're
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, we wanted to leave the audience with two activities that they could do, which would be empowering for brains. Um, so, neurolymphatic rub is one of them. This one is great to remove congestion in the lymph, so the fluid in the body that carries the toxins out. And so, being able to oxygenate it to improve your circulation, you'll have clarity, emotional resiliency. And just doing this little activity changes the way you breathe and changes how that goes back to the brain and really enhances the brain. So I'm going to invite people. If you're driving in the car, you could use one hand. But otherwise, it's usually two hands because you can do both at the same time. So we're just going to go on the front of the body to rub points. They're called neurolymphatic points, and they clear the fluid and the way the fluid runs, but it also emphasizes how everything should function better. You can also rub down the back on either side of the spine with firm pressure. But since most of us are going to do this rub for ourselves and not have someone to do our backs for us, then
Hmm.
we could do the front side and not do the back side. But if you have somebody that could do a nice little rub down the back, I'm taking my fingers, for those listening, I'm taking my fingers kind of like a peace sign, and then just bending my fingers so I could do a firm pressure into both points on either side of the spine and just work from the top to the bottom, taking your time to really massage into each point as you go along. But on the front of the body, what we can do is we can rub between the ribs on the front. So if you just dig firmly into that, going into the sternum, that can be great. I hope I'm not too close to the microphone. And then we can go up and down on the sternum. That is great for breathing, especially if you need to get a deeper breath in, or you notice that your bronchial respiratory system isn't at its highest. This is a great little one to have. Then you can go along the collarbone. So if you think of the width of your head or your face, and if you go to the outside edge of that right at the collarbone and rub there, it's a point for lungs. So this is a great point. And then you can go along the shoulder seams. So we talked about shoulder seams helping the brain. So we can rub down in those seams. And you can do firm pressure for about 10 seconds, 20 seconds. You don't have to be there too long. I'm going a little quicker. And then you've got along the arm, so you've got where the bicep runs. If you go to the top part of that, leading up towards the shoulder, just start rubbing along there. And for a lot of people, they'll notice that could be tender. And
Mhm.
this is a great point to help strengthen the eyes.
Hmm.
So if we go to the other side, you can rub on that. And then we can go to along the ribs. So you've got where the guide wire on a brow would be. You could rub along the ribs there. So just coming into the ribs. And again, you'll start applying pressure, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, feels like a pinprick or bruising. And then you know, oh, a little bit more love is needed there. You can go underneath the ribs and just follow along from where the sternum comes down in the front of the chest, and then where the ribs separate, you start from there, and then you're just going to rub underneath the ribs all the way along till you get to the side.
Hmm.
That one's a great one for before you go up the stairs. That helps with the quads. Then you have a little monkey point on the side. You can rub just wherever your arms come, your fingertips can come together on either side, just rubbing there. And then we have like 3 buttons. So you have your belly button, and if you go 2 fingers width outside from the belly button and 2 finger widths up, you can start there, and that'd be the first set of buttons. So you're on either side. And then you can go on either side of the belly button. And then if you go 2 fingers below the belly button, but still 2 fingers out, you can get that third button. And then the next part would be on the side of the legs. So you can rub On the side of the legs, moving just like knuckles, just moving up the leg from the knee, up the side, all the way to the hip. And you can do the same on the inside, traveling from the inside of the knee up towards the hip. And you can go a little bit above what would be the seam on your pants, and then you can go a little bit below, so you can do a couple passes so that you can get fully along both sides. And for some people, those points can be very tender, which means give them more love. So you don't have to rub for a long period, but you can keep coming back to them. And what we probably can reach is just taking our knuckles into the small of our back and just rubbing there, the tailbone, kind of the flat spot at L5. And then if you can go up the spine, wherever you can reach to travel up that. And we can do it from the top, so from the shoulder, kind of coming up the neck, and you can come up to the base of the skull. So it's a really fast little massage that you can do. It can be something while you're waiting for kettle to boil, or your class hasn't started yet. If you run those neurolymphatics before class, it completely energizes you in a different way, which is fabulous. So you don't feel the effort in the same way. And if you do it after class, the recovery off of that is no stiff muscles.
Wow.
Which can be really, like you said, on those days when it's like the whole new patterns happened and few new muscles have been found. That can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. And the last one I just wanted to share is the central and governing. And this one we can just hold. So we've traced them before, but if you hold one hand on your forehead and the other on the back of the head, we're going to connect those two. There's two energy lines that travel up the body and travel over the head. And if you just breathe deeply while you hold this, and if you're looking at nature, noticing color, it's going to be really helpful. It's going to connect us cognitively, emotionally. It'll help with sensory integration and energetic grounding. Great for the nervous system and great to get creativity starting to flow. All right. So there's 2 tips that you can add in there, and plus all the other things we've talked about today, Laurin. What a deep dive. I love it.
Yeah, but what a fun topic to explore. There's so much good stuff there. So, yeah.
All right, as we finish up for today, we wish for you that you take a little bit of time to take the shore road. Think about those 5 senses. Think about how you can enhance creativity, how you can take your imagination, and just like Laurin is describing what she's picking up for her books, picking up for her characters and the settings, think about life in that same kind of way. And then how are you bringing in those ideas so that you can write your own story and you can be really present in it. And as you're sipping away on the last of your tea or your infused water, reminding yourself that creativity is not a luxury. It's a biological requirement so that we can be thriving, adaptive, and have resilient brains. And as always, Laurin, thank you for your openness and wisdom. And I'm feeling very privileged to, be on the inside scoop of some of the background of the stories that you're working on. And so thank you for that too.
Oh, well, you're welcome. And I always learn things about myself when we have these conversations. And so I really appreciate just the time that we spend together. It's just such a gift. And I'm glad that you feel like it's useful too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Stay tuned for our 5th episode, which will be coming out next month. And we'll look forward to what that topic will be and where the journey has taken both of us next.
Yeah.
And in the process of that, we're heading into the holidays. So we wish everyone the very best for finding the creativity and the joy in each day as you go through your holidays. And just remember to make choices that help you to be well.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Take care, everyone. Cheers.